Good morning, class, and welcome back to Algebra 1, where we are going to use the area method to help us solve our problems. We're also going to use algebra tiles as well. Okay, so first, before we start, I want you to go ahead and grab some colored pens, pencils, markers, crayons, whatever you need, because this will help us with our problems. So go ahead and grab those right now. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these boxes, which represent our area tiles. Okay, so we're going to use these area tiles. So let's look at our first one right here. Okay, we have this small box, and the small box is 1 by 1. Okay, and when we're finding the area, which is the whole inside of our shape, we have to multiply our sides together. So 1 times 1 equals 1. So our area for our small box is just 1. Okay, so now we have a rectangular algebra tile here, and we have this side as x, this side as 1. Again, to find the area, the entire inside of our rectangle, we have to multiply x times 1, and x times 1 is x, so the area of our rectangle is x. Okay, our last algebra tile we'll be using is this big one over here, and we have this one is x by x, and remember to get the area, the entire inside, we multiply x times x, which is x squared, so the area of our blue box is x squared. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and try to remember these as we move on to some of our next problems to help us. Okay, so here we go. Here's our first example, and our directions are multiply using the area method. So let's look at our problem here. We have x plus 2 times x plus 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by looking at this first binomial here. Okay, and so our first then says x plus 2. So we're going to start with x. So x, remember, was that rectangle. So we're going to go ahead and draw a rectangle. Okay, and then we have 2, and remember those small boxes were, the small box areas were 1, so we have to make, have 2 of them to equal 2, because 1 plus 1 is 2. Okay, so now let's look at this second binomial here, when we have x. So let's go ahead and make our rectangle, because our rectangle is equal to x. And then we have a 1, which is just one small box. All right, so we're going to use these to help us with the area tiles to find the middle part. Okay, and how we do that is we take our top numbers and we multiply them by our side numbers. So we would do x times x, then x times 1, and then we would move on to these two and do the same thing. Okay, so x times x is x squared, which is that represents that big blue box we had. So I'm going to use blue and write x squared. Okay, now we did x times x, so now we need to do x times 1, and x times 1 is just x, and that is our rectangle right there. And it's in green because that's what we used when we first started. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and move on. Since we're done with this column, we're going to move on to this number here, and we're going to do the same thing, 1 times x and 1 times 1. So 1 times x equals x, which is our rectangle, and 1 times 1 is just 1, which is one of those small squares. Okay, then we're going to go ahead, we're done with this column, we're going to go ahead and move to the next one, which is 1, and 1 times x is x, and then we have 1 times 1, which is 1. Okay, so now we're going to look at the inside, our colored boxes, to help us write our expression. And when we write our expression, we always start with our biggest shape and then move down to our smaller shapes. So our biggest shape right here is x squared, so that goes first. Okay, and then next we have our rectangles, and we have 1, 2, 3 of them. So x plus x plus x equals 3x. We have 3 of them, 1, 2, 3. All right, then we move down to our smallest boxes, and they are both equal to 1, and 1 plus 1 is 2, so that is going to go up to at the end of our expression. Okay, and now we have our expression at the bottom that we used our algebra tiles to help us solve, and our expression reads x squared plus 3x plus 2. Okay, let's go ahead and do one more. Let's go ahead and do our next example. Okay, and our next example, we are going to multiply using the area method again. And our problem says x plus 3 times x plus 2. So let's go ahead and get our problem started. And remember, we're going to start with this first binomial here. And we have x, which is that big rectangle. Okay, and then we have 3. Remember, we don't have any shapes that represent 3, but we have a shape that represents 1. That was our smallest box. So we are going to make 3 of them to represent 3. Okay, let's go ahead and move to our next binomial. And we have an x here in the front and in the beginning. So we're going to go ahead and write x, which is our rectangle. Okay, and then we have 2. So we're going to draw 2 small boxes. All right, so now we have our problem set up with our area tiles. So now let's go ahead and make the inside. So remember, we start with our top and multiply it by our side. So let's start here with x, and x times x is x squared. We're going to make it a blue box with the x squared because that is what we used in the beginning. Okay, and now we did x times x, so now we need to do x times 1, and x times 1 is x, and remember x is the rectangle. Okay, and then we have x times 1 again, which is another x. Okay, we're done with this column. Now we need to move to our next column. Okay, and we have 1 times x, which equals x. So there's our rectangle. We have 1 times 1, which just equals 1. And 1 is our small box. Then we do 1 times 1 again, which equals 1. So we have another small box. Okay, we're done with this column. Now we need to move to the next one. All right, and we have 1 times x again, which equals x. And we have 1 times 1, which is 1, and 1 times 1 again, which equals 1. And as you can see, we have 3 ones here, so they are going to look all identical. All right, so here we go again for our last column. 1 times x is x. 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, so now we are going to use the inside area tiles, our colored area tiles, to help us write our expression. So remember, we always start with our biggest shape and move down to our smaller shapes. Our biggest shape is our big blue box, which is x squared, so that goes first. Okay, and then we move on to our rectangles and that are represented by x, and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of them. So that is a plus 5x because our rectangles are represented with x. Okay, now we move on to our smallest boxes, and those all are represented by 1. We're going to go and add them up together, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have a plus 6 at the end of our expression. So again, we used our algebra tiles to help us write our expression, and our answer is x squared plus 5x plus 6. There's our answer. Okay, and now the last problem we have is an extension problem. And this one's asking, how can we use algebra tiles to multiply? And I want us to look at our problem right here. This time we have an x minus 2 times an x plus 3. So how do you think we're going to use our algebra tiles to turn our binomials into an expression? So I want you guys to try this one on your own, and we will go over it tomorrow in class.